just a very short reminder of chapter 2, which was a very long chapter, but a very thrilling one. And we are looking in all these chapters, remember it's an overview, and we're looking for, particularly, I'm liking to look for what God was doing with Nebuchadnezzar. It's so intriguing and so wonderful in its outcome. So that's what we were asking ourselves in the last chapter. Why did he give Nebuchadnezzar, this seemingly very cruel, powerful king, but he gave him this amazing dream which took him from his own time right to the coming of Jesus Christ? Can you imagine? That is amazing. And anyway, we now know that is true, but we're still watching the progress in Nebuchadnezzar's life, because, as you know, there are certain things he says, like tearing people limb from limb, that sort of thing, which aren't really quite the talk of a godly person, are they? So there are one or two things that have to be smoothed out, and we're going to find in chapter 4 we've got just that wonderful, wonderful account of his life. But meanwhile, we've just got this beautiful chapter 3. It is so exciting. And I suppose what I look at so particularly is these three men. We tend to think Daniel and his three friends, but they're just as important in many ways. They're very important. And we're going to see, when we read this, the tremendous faith they had. It's astounding, but it's people that love God a lot, I suppose. That's what they become. And so I'm going to read this chapter in a different version. It's not very different. It's the RSV, or Revised Standard Version, rather than the New Revised Standard Version, which is the one I usually use, because I was a little bit put off my stroke when I tried to read it privately out loud, and when I came to the certain passages which keep recurring about the musical instruments, where it was using different words, and it really threw me. So I thought, well, I know it doesn't say that in all the versions. So I had a look at this version, and it was the version I was used to. So that's what I'm using today for the whole of this chapter. And I'm going to read this chapter first, because really, who can speak more exciting words than the actual author of this? So let's let this chapter speak for itself, and at the end we'll ask ourselves a few questions about it. Chapter 3. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth was 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to assemble the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the councillors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then all those people, all those officials, came together for the dedication, and King Nebuchadnezzar that he'd set up, and the herald proclaimed, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be immediately cast into a burning, fiery furnace." Therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of every kind of music, they fell down and worshipped the golden image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Therefore, At that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. And they said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, and their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no heed to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I've set up? Now, if you're ready, when you hear the sound of every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image which I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you've set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered that the furnace be heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered certain mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their mantles, their tunics, their hats, their other garments, and they were cast into the burning fiery furnace. Because the king's order was strict and the furnace very hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose up in haste, and he said to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" And they answered the king, "True, O king." He answered, "But I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they're not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come forth and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their head was not singed, their mantles were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come on them. Nebuchadnezzar said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and set at naught the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than served and worshipped any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So ends chapter 3. Well, we do see a dramatic change in Nebuchadnezzar, don't we? But what a story. This is not just a story, it's a true account. And it's an account of a king who was so powerful, but so cruel that it was almost built into his language, this tearing apart people limb from limb and all that sort of thing, which we find horrifying, mingled in with praise for their God. And so, but this is what I want us to do, is to ask ourselves, are we seeing something happening in the life of Nebuchadnezzar? Taking the second chapter to begin with, we see what happened there. And then we see it was a partial change, but now we've got another change happening. But also to notice that those three men, the friends of Daniel, but what wonderful young men, I suppose they still were. What faith, what wonderful statements. But, to Nebuchadnezzar, but if he doesn't save us, we're still not going to worship your God, and we shall still be believing in him. It is just spine-tingling in its nature of how it can thrill us. And it's the same God that we are worshipping. Wow. Same God.